This is Scott Spears, and today we have an interview I have been waiting a long time to do. Today we are joined by the author of 63 documents the government doesn't want you to read, the former governor of the great state of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura. Governor, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing tonight?
It's such a pleasure to talk with you. I'm doing great. I've wanted to speak with you for so long, and I'm so glad it's finally happened.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully we'll have a good conversation, and my book won't be that controversial.
Well, I'll tell you, the book, it's a good topic of conversation. I was talking to somebody today, and I said, you need to go to the bookstore and get this book because this is a conversation starter. It's a coffee table book, I think. It's just brilliant. Why did you write this book, Governor?
Well, Dick and I wrote the book following American Conspiracies, and when we wrote American Conspiracies, of course, we took the conspiratorial side and showed evidence throughout that book that in many cases goes against the government's official story. And we took a lot of grief over it. We took those, they say you're speculating, you don't da-da-da, this and that and this and that. So we got together and we thought about it, and we said the next book, let's do a book on government documents. And we actually started the book 3 or 4 months before WikiLeaks even happened. We were already working on this. And we thought, let's produce government documents that are so controversial that they can't attack us, because our defense then is, hey, these are your government's documents. They're not Jesse Ventura and Dick Russell speculating about an event that happened.
Well, Governor, these documents that have been published in your book, why do you think they haven't come forth in any other media? Because some are quite old.
Well, because of the fact that I don't believe our media does what they were designed to do today, our mainstream media. In the days when our country was formed, the media was looked at as the fourth branch of government, the unwritten fourth branch, and their job was to watchdog the other three. Our problem today is the other three branches have absorbed our media into them, and our media no longer does the function that they were supposed to do. They now promote whatever the government does instead of watchdogging it and promoting it with the truth. They will go along with the spin, and it's because if they don't, they won't be given access to them. And access to the power structure, if you're a political reporter, is your lifeblood. If you don't get access, you lose your job.
When do you think that started?
Oh, gosh, who knows? I mean, it's probably been eroding to that, and it's just peaking to the level that it is now. I don't think we're going to see Woodward and Bernstein anymore.
Isn't that interesting that Woodward and Bernstein happened in the 70s? And I think if you asked the common citizen, the last 11, maybe 16 years have been what they would consider the worst, where the media, you can clearly see the bias.
Well, that and our media is no longer into reporting the news, they're into trying to create it.
Do you think that has anything to do with cable?
I blame it on the show 60 Minutes.
Why is that?
Well, 60 Minutes, hear me out, was a marvelous show. But here's before 60 Minutes, the news was written off as a business loss. They would make it up in their entertainment department. All the networks were that way. They felt they had an obligation to report the day's events and to keep people informed. And if they didn't make money and lost money, well, we'll make it up in the entertainment division. Then along came the show 60 Minutes. All of a sudden, 60 Minutes went to top 10, or top number 1. And the bean counters, the light bulb went off. They said, you mean we can make money with the news? And ever since then, we've been getting opinions, not news. We've been getting personalities, not news. We've been getting Anna Nicole Smith, not news.
That's interesting. I've never heard somebody say that. That's fascinating. That's an interesting perspective. Governor, when you came up with this book and were putting it together with these documents, is there a favorite part of the book that you have?
Well, not really. There's not a favorite. This book, in fact, I will tell you, was very difficult to do. It hurt to do this book. every member of my immediate family has served at a time of war in the military. To say that we're patriotic it's there. You know, not many people can say their mom is a World War II veteran. Mine is. And when I write a book about my country, to the extent that this makes me call us the United States of hypocrisy instead of the United States of America, that hurts me. So this was not a fun book to do, but I felt it was a necessary book to do. Many times things in life have to be done, even though they don't provide any pleasure.
Obviously, when you wrote your last book, you were skeptical. When you actually saw these documents, what did it do to you personally?
Well, it made me believe that our country says one thing, but it does another thing, which is the defined definition of hypocrisy. We stand out there and talk about peace, and yet we're the most war country in the world in the last 50 years. Do you realize I'll be 60 years old this summer, and my country's been at war for over half of those years? And then take a look at the 2010 election. The 2010 election, the wars weren't even on the agenda. They weren't even on the radar screen. Am I correct?
You are? Yes.
Well, have they calloused us to the point where we in the United States expect to be at war every year? It's now the same as eating and sleeping. We'll be at war. It seems so. We have no protests going on. I finally, in Minneapolis today, saw protesters about private manning holding up signs in front of some building stating whistleblower to war crimes should not be held as a criminal.
Why do you think we're reluctant to protest? I mean, because as a citizen, we have the ability.
Because we got brainwashed during George Bush 1 that if you spoke out against the war, you were unpatriotic.
Now, when did that happen? What event caused that?
9/11.
Oh, so George Bush 2.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the kid.
Okay.
9/11. Because if you spoke out against anything, you were called unpatriotic.
Yeah, those...
And they drove that home. You know what's interesting? Hermann Göring, Hitler's right-hand man, said it's easy to take a country to war. All you have to do is convince the people they're under attack. Well, they did that. Denounce the pacifists for being unpatriotic. They did that. And denounce the pacifist position for empowering the enemy. They did that also. So here we are as the United States of America following the teachings of Hermann Göring, a Nazi.
You know, Governor, I want to talk about that because part of your book, this book, there's a little bit on 9/11. And obviously you've been one of the major conspiracy theorists that 9/11 might have been an inside job. Now, kind of take me through that.
Well, first of all, the government's a conspiracy theorist also.
Now, how's that?
What have they proven to you? They've only told you. What have they proven? They never charged bin Laden for 9/11. He was never indicted. So therefore, they've never officially brought forth one shred of evidence in our legal system. They've merely convicted everybody in the media, on television, and by telling you this is what happened. Is that not true?
Yes, I would agree with you on that, but I do think there are groups of people who do question. I guess everybody would be a conspiracy theorist then.
Well, the point is, they've never proven anything. Why didn't they indict bin Laden for 9/11?
I don't know.
That's proper procedure. In other words, we can go out and kill him, but we shouldn't indict him first.
Now,
That's the rules of the Wild West, isn't it? Where you go out with a posse, catch the guy, and hang him from the tree without a trial?
Have other war criminals, or not even war criminals, have other terrorists been indicted?
No, but we've pardoned them. Orlando Bosch was a CIA operative who blew up a Cuban plane with Olympic Sr. pardoned him.
Why do you think he did that?
Because he's a CIA man. It's that simple.
Why?
Now, is that not an act of terrorism? You know, I laughed. I got in trouble on Fox News because I made the statement. I said, why are we so angry that terrorists are attacking us when we've been practicing terrorism for 50 years? We simply call it foreign policy. And let me give you an example. We've been practicing terrorism on the country of Cuba. We've attempted to assassinate their leader on multiple occasions. We've burned their cane fields. We've blown up ships in their harbor. And this Orlando Bosch blew up a Cuban airliner with civilians on board. Are those not acts of terrorism?
Yes, I think if you're living in Cuba, they certainly are. I think the stance, not necessarily mine, but of an American citizen would be, Cuba has not been friendly with us, so that's how we deal with it.
Oh, really? I would say the opposite. I'd say we haven't been friendly with Cuba, and that gives us the right to attack them. What has Cuba ever done to us, other than kick out the mafia and our oil companies? They kicked out our corporations. That's why we dislike them. Look at the example of China and Cuba. They're both communist countries. We can't get enough of China because China welcomes our corporations. Castro kicked out our corporations. That's why we hate him. That's why we hate Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, because he booted out Exxon and nationalized their oil.
Do you think any of the American anger toward Castro in Cuba has anything to do with the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I don't know. You know, I was just a young child back then. I remember it, I recall it, and I don't understand why we're angry with Cuba. What has Cuba ever done to us?
That's the only big thing I can remember, and I don't remember.
They've never done anything.
Well, I think the allowing the Russians to put their missiles there.
That was 45 years ago.
Now that you're right about. I don't know why this has gone on so long. I really don't understand that. We started this, you're an interesting man to talk to. I'm going to try to wheel it back to 9/11 here. What is your theory of what happened on 9/11?
You know, I don't know. Only the perpetrators know. All I know is that what we were told is not the truth, because it defies the laws of physics. It's simple as this. You know those buildings that collapsed in 10 seconds?
Right.
If you took a billiard ball and merely dropped at the height of the World Trade Center and stopped it and started in free fall, like they say a pancake collapse, it would take a minute and a half for the billiard ball to reach the ground. How could these buildings get dustified and reach the ground in 10 seconds?
You know, I think you're perfectly just to ask those questions. I don't think you should be attacked for that, as some have been. The actor Ed Asner, I know, has taken heat for discussing 9/11. Do you think it'll get easier to discuss what happened there as the years pass?
Probably so, because the perpetrators will then all die and get away with it. Just like it's easier today. Look at on my television show this fall. We had a confession to the murder of John Kennedy, and it wasn't even reported by the mainstream media. There's no statute of limitation on murders, especially of the president.
Now, I want to talk about, and I want to get one more question off about 9/11, because I do want to talk about that. 9/11, not because you say you don't know who did it, but who do you believe did it? What's your best guess?
I don't know. All I know is that if our government didn't participate in it or allow it to happen, they had to be the most inept buffoons that have ever been in charge of this country, because they were given multiple ample warnings. They did things that allowed them to be successful, like the stand-down order. And, you know, it's very difficult. There was also insider trading that was clearly done on the stock market, so someone wanted to profit off 9/11 and certainly knew it was going to happen before it did. Those are all disturbing questions. Can I answer who did it? No. No, I cannot.
But you are inclined to believe that the government had a hand, and if they didn't, they're inept.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
So, and I'm just laying this out. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the government would have done it to take us into the wars that we were in.
Sure. They're called false flag operations. They're done all the time.
Okay.
Governments have done that all through history. The Germans did it with the Rückstock fire. We did it in Vietnam with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. They've done it. All you got to do is study history, and you'll see that prior to almost every war, there'll be what's called a false flag operation. And that operation is done to get the people up in arms so that they will support the war.
And there's some great documentary work done on McNamara before he passed away regarding that.